Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
This became clear to me when, 2 days later, I went with Flora to meet, as Mrs. Groves said, the little boy. Something happened on the second evening that upset me a lot. The first day was, overall, reassuring. But it ended with worry. The mailbag came late that evening and had a letter for me. The letter was from my boss, and it had only a few words. It also had another letter inside it, addressed to him, with a seal still closed. This is from the headmaster, and the headmaster is very boring. Read it, please. Deal with it. But don't tell me anything. Not a word. I'm leaving. I opened the letter with great effort. It was very hard to do. I took the unopened letter to my room and only read it just before going to bed. I should have waited until morning because it gave me another sleepless night. With no advice to take, I was very worried the next day. Finally, I decided to talk to Mrs. Groves about it. What does it mean? The child is kicked out of his school. She looked at me. Then, quickly, she seemed to take it back. But aren't they all? Sent home, yes. But only for the holidays. Miles may never go back at all. Under my look, she turned red. They won't take him back? They absolutely refuse. At this, she raised her eyes, which she had turned away from me. I saw them fill with tears. What has he done? I hesitated. Then I thought it best to just hand her my letter. But she did not take it. She put her hands behind her. She shook her head sadly. Such things are not for me, miss. My helper couldn't read. I felt bad for my mistake and opened my letter again to read it to her. Then, unsure, I folded it up once more and put it back in my pocket. Is he really bad? There were still tears in her eyes. Do the men say so? They don't give details. They just say they regret that it is impossible to keep him. That can only mean one thing. Mrs. Groves listened with silent emotion. She did not ask me what this meaning might be. So, to make it clear and with her just being there to help me understand, I went on, that he's a problem for the others. At this, with a quick reaction, she suddenly got very upset. Master Miles. A problem? There was so much belief in her words that, even though I had not seen the child yet, my fears made me think the idea was silly. To make my friend feel better, I said sarcastically to his poor little innocent friends. It's too awful, cried Mrs. Groves, to say such mean things. Why, he's barely 10 years old. Yes, it would be unbelievable. She was thankful for my words. See him first, miss. Then believe it. I felt a new eagerness to see him. I was very curious now, and this curiosity grew stronger over the next few hours. Mrs. Groves could see what she had done to me, and she continued with confidence. You might as well believe it of the little girl. Bless her, she added, look at her. I turned and saw Flora, whom I had put in the schoolroom 10 minutes before with a sheet of white paper, a pencil, and a copy of Nice Roundos. Now she was at the open door. She showed, in her own way, a great escape from boring tasks, looking at me with a big childish smile that seemed to say it was because of her love for me that she followed me. I needed nothing more to feel the full strength of Mrs. Groves's comparison, and, catching my student in my arms, I covered her with kisses, feeling sorry. Still, for the rest of the day, I looked for another chance to talk to my colleague, especially as, toward evening, I began to think she was trying to avoid me. I caught up with her, I remember, on the stairs. We went down together, and at the bottom, I stopped her, holding her with a hand on her arm. I take what you said to me at noon as a statement that you've never known him to be bad. She threw back her head. She had clearly, by this time, and very honestly, taken a stance. Oh, never known him? I don't claim that. I was upset again. Then you have known him? Yes, indeed, miss. Thank God. After thinking about it, I accepted this. You mean that a boy who never is no boy for me? I held her tighter. You like them with the spirit to be naughty? Then, following her answer, so do I. I said eagerly, but not to the degree to harm. To contaminate? My big word confused her. I explained it. To corrupt. She stared, understanding what I meant, but she laughed oddly. Are you afraid he'll corrupt you? She asked this with such bold humor that I laughed too, feeling a bit silly. But the next day, as the time for my drive came closer, I thought of something else. What was the lady like who was here before? The last governess? She was also young and pretty, almost as young and pretty as you, miss. Then, I hope her youth and beauty helped her. I said, he seems to like us young and pretty. Oh, he did. Mrs. Groves agreed. It was the way he liked everyone. She quickly corrected herself. I mean, that's how the master liked everyone. I was surprised. But who did you talk about first? She looked confused but then blushed. Why, him. The master. Who else? There was clearly no one else, so I let go of my feeling that she had said more than she meant, and I asked what I wanted to know. Did she see anything in the boy? That wasn't right? She never told me. I hesitated, but then asked, was she careful, particular? Mrs. Groves seemed to try to be honest. About some things, yes. But not about everything? Again she thought. Well, miss, she's gone. I won't tell tales. I understand how you feel, I quickly replied, but I felt I could ask one more question. Did she die here? No, she went away. I don't know why Mrs. Groves's short answer made me curious. Went away to die? Mrs. Groves looked straight out of the window, but I felt I had a right to know what young people working at Bly were expected to do. She got sick, you mean, and went home? She didn't get sick, so far as I know, in this house. She left at the end of the year to go home for a short holiday, which she had earned. We had a young woman, a nursemaid who stayed and took care of the children during that time. But our young lady never came back, and at the very moment I was expecting her, I heard from the master that she was dead. I thought about this. But of what? He never told me. But please, miss, said Mrs. Groves, I must get back to work.